Shalom, welcome back, friends, to another Snowball Bible reading video. We're getting back into the book of 1 Samuel. We're in chapter 18. It's been a couple weeks since I did my last video. Like to be more consistent, at least one video a week going forward. So Thursday evening, 7 o'clock. That's when I'm typically going to be planning to be on here live. So if that works out for you, I'd love to see you joining us in these videos. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you guys can see what we're going to be reading. We got David and Jonathan's friendship. A lot of you guys are already familiar with the book of Samuel. We got David and Goliath. A lot of really awesome action-packed stories in 1 Samuel. One of my favorite books to read. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into reading. But first, let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Yah, just pray that you bless this time as we dig into your word. Help us to have eyes to see and ears to hear. Father, I pray that we would take away applicable sections of passage that we could meditate on, and that we'd just be edified by the time that we spend in your word right now. Pray a blessing on each person listening, and we just thank you for this time, and it's in your son Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so if you have the ability to do so, follow along. If not, the words are on the screen, of course. I never know how my audio is coming through, so I hope it's not too loud. I think I got my microphone turned up quite a bit so that it's picking up clearly. So my son is coming into the room, so bear with me for just a minute. Bob Cleveland, shalom. All right. Excuse me. All right. So, sorry, my son came in. He is looking for a screwdriver. But, so Bob says, thanks for Thursday, 7 p.m. schedule. Too many later and even more through the weekend. Yeah, we might do some more through the weekend as well. I like to do the evening schedule. In the morning, I'm not really, my brain's not all there. I don't read as well in the morning. So let's go ahead and dig into this, shall we? I'm going to just turn it on. Where is it at? All right. 1 Samuel 18. And it came to be when he had ended speaking to Saul that the beginning of Jonathan was knit to the being of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own being. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house any more. And Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own being. And Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and his bow and his girdle. And David went out wherever Saul sent him. He acted wisely, and Saul set him over the men of battle. And it was right in the eyes of all the people, and also in the eyes of Saul's servants. Excuse me. And it came to be, as they came in, as David was returning from striking the Philistine, that the women came out from all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet Saul and the king with tambourines, with joy and with musical instruments. Pardon me. And the women sang as they danced, and said, Saul struck his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And Saul was very wroth, and this matter was evil in his eyes, and he said, to David they have given 10,000s, and to me they have given but thousands. So what more for him except the kingdom? And from that day on, Saul eyed David. And it came to be on the next day that an evil spirit from Elohim came upon Saul, and he prophesied inside the house, while David was playing the lyre with his hand, as usual, and the spear was in the hand of Saul. And Saul hurled the spear, for he said, let me strike David even to the wall. But twice David withdrew from his presence. And Saul was afraid of David, because Yahuwah was with him. But from Saul he had turned away. Saul therefore removed him from his presence, and made him his commander over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David was acting wisely in all his ways, and Yahuwah was with him. And Saul saw that he had acted very wisely, and was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, as he went out and came in before them. And Saul said to David, see my older daughter, Merab. I give her to you as wife. Only be brave for me, and fight the battles of Yahuwah. For Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but the hand of the Philistines be against him. And David said to Saul, who am I, what is my life or my father's clan in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? And it came to be at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given to Adriel, the Maholathite, as a wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the matter was right in his eyes. And Saul said, let me give her to him, and let her be a snare to him, and the hand of the Philistines be against him. So Saul said to David a second time, be my son-in-law today. And Saul commanded his servants, speak to David gently, and say, see, the king has delighted in you, and all his servants have loved you. And now, be the king's son-in-law. And the servants of Saul spoke those words in the hearing of David. And David said, does it seem to you a small matter to be a king's son-in-law, seeing I'm a poor man and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, David has spoken according to these words. And Saul said, say to David, the king has no delight in any payment for the bride, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to take vengeance on the king's enemies. But Saul intended to have David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And his servants declared these words to David, and it pleased David well to become the king's son-in-law, and the days had not expired. And David arose and went, he and his men, and struck 200 men of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, and they set them before the king, to become a king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, as a wife. And Saul saw and knew that David was with David. that Yahuwah was with David, and Michal, daughter of Saul, did love him. So then Saul was still more afraid of David, and Saul came to be an enemy of David all the days. And the princes of the Philistines went out to fight, and it came to be whenever they went out, that David acted more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name came to be very precious. One moment, my friends. Please excuse me. What is it?
My mom says I can do the finger part, but she wants to know if I can do the screw part.
Sorry, guys. Shalom, JS Genesis Designs and GR Cleve. Shalom. Okay. So we just finished reading chapter 18, and we're going to go ahead and continue on. Oh, I want to do this. Hi, Glenna. Okay, here we are. Pow. And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants, and put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan declared to David, saying, My father Saul seeks to put you to death. And now, please be on your guard until morning, and dwell in secrecy and hide. And I myself shall go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and speak with my father about you, and shall see, and shall let you know. And Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hands and struck the Philistine, and Yahuwah wrought a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Then why do you sin against innocent blood to put David to death without cause? And Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, As Yahuwah lives, he does not die. Jonathan then called David, and Jonathan told him all these words. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as before. And there was fighting again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and struck them a great smiting, and they fled before him. And an evil spirit from Yahuwah came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the lyre with his hand. And Saul sought to strike the spear through David and into the wall, but he slipped away from the presence of Saul. So he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. And Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him and to put him to death in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, informed him, saying, If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you are put to death. So Michal let David down through a window, and went and fled and escaped. And Michal took the household idol and laid it in the bed, and put a cover of goat's hair for his head, and covered it with a garment. And when Saul sent messengers to David, she said, He is sick. And Saul sent the messengers back to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed to put him to death. And the messengers came in and saw the household idol in the bed with a cover of goat's hair for his head. Saul then said to Michal, Why have you deceived me like this, and sent my enemy away, so that he escaped? And Michal answered Saul and said to him, He said to me, Let me go. Why should I put you to death?" And David fled and escaped and went to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was reported to Saul, saying, "See, David is in Naioth in Ramah." And Saul sent messengers to take David, and they saw the assembly of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as leader over them. And the Spirit of Elohim came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when Saul was told, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. So Saul sent messengers again, the third time, and they prophesied also. Then he himself went to Ramah, and came to the great well that is at Seku. And he asked and said, "Where are Samuel and David?" And one said, They're in Naioth Ramah. And he went to Naioth Ramah, and the Spirit of Elohim was upon him too. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth Ramah. And he also stripped off his garments and prophesied before Samuel, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore they say, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" Chapter 20. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and went and said to Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my crookedness, and what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life?" And Jonathan said to him, "Far be it, you are not going to die. See, my father does no big matter nor small matter without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this matter from me? It is not so." But David swore again and said, "Your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes." And he says, "Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as Yahuwah lives, and as your being lives, there is but a step between me and death." And Jonathan said to David, "Whatever your desire is, I do it for you." And David said to Jonathan, "See, tomorrow is the new moon, and I ought to sit with the king to eat. But let me go, and I shall hide in the field until the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then you shall say, 'David earnestly asked my permission to run over to Bethlehem, his city, for a yearly slaughtering is made there for all the clan.' If he says thus, it is well, your servant is safe. But if he is very displeased, then know that he has resolved to do evil. And you shall show loving commitment to your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of Yahuwah with you. And if there is crookedness in me, put me to death yourself. For why should you bring me to your father?" And Jonathan said, "Far be it from you. For if I knew with certainty that my father has resolved that evil is to come upon you, then would I not make it known to you?" And David said to Jonathan, "Who would make it known to me? Or what if your father answers you sharply?" And Jonathan said to David, "Come, let us go out into the field." And they both went out into the field. And Jonathan said to David, "Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, be witness. When I search out my father sometime tomorrow, or the third day, and see if there is good toward David, and I do not send to you or disclose it to you, so let Yahuwah do so and much more to Jonathan. And if it pleases my father to do you evil, then I shall disclose it to you and send you away, and you shall go in peace. And Yahuwah be with you as he has been with my father. But show me the loving commitment of Yahuwah, not only while I still live, so that I do not die, and do not cut off your loving commitment from my house forever. No, not when Yahuwah has cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "Yahuwah shall acquire it at the hand of the enemies of David." And Jonathan again made David swear, because he loved him. For he loved him as as he loved his own being. So Jonathan said to him, Tomorrow is the new moon, and you shall be missed, because your seat shall be empty. And on the third day, go down quickly, and you shall come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and shall remain by the stone Etzel. And let me shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though shooting at a target. And see, I shall send the youth, saying, Go, find the arrows. If I expressly say to the youth, Look, the arrows are on this side of you, let them get them and come. Then, as Yahuwah lives, there is safety for you and no concern. But if I say thus to the youth, Look, the arrows are beyond you, go your way, for Yahuwah has sent you away. And as for the word which you and I have spoken of, see, Yahuwah is between you and me forever. And David hid in the field. And when the new moon came, the king sat down by the food to eat. And the king sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall, with Jonathan standing, and Abner sitting by Saul's side. But the place of David was empty. But Saul spoke not a word that day, for he thought it is an accident. He is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. And it came to be the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, Why has the son of Jesse not come to eat, either yesterday or today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked my permission to go to Bethlehem. And he said, Please let me go, for our clan has a slaughtering in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. And now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me get away and see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table. Then the displeasure of Saul burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established, you and your reign. And now, send and bring him to me, for he is a son of death. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, Why should he be put to death? What has he done? At that, Saul hurled a spear at him to smite him. Then Jonathan knew that his father had resolved to put David to death. And Jonathan rose up from the table in the heat of displeasure, and ate no food the second day of the new moon. For he was grieved for David, because his father put him to shame. And it came to be in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a small youth was with him. And he said to the youth, Now run, find the arrows which I shoot. As the youth ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the youth came to the place where the arrow was which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called out after the youth and said, Is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan shouted after the youth, Make haste, hurry, do not stand still. And Jonathan's youth picked up the arrows and came to his master. But the youth knew not a speck. Only Jonathan and David knew of the matter. And Jonathan gave his weapons to the youth and said to him, Go, take them to the city. And as soon as the youth had gone, David rose up from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed down 3 times and they kissed one another. And they wept together, but David more so. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of Yahuwah, saying, Yahuwah is between you and me, and between your seed and my seed forever. Then he arose and left, and Jonathan went into the city. And David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech trembled when he met David, and asked him, Why are you alone, and no one is with you? And David said to Ahimelech the priest, The king has commanded me a word, and said to me, Let no one know whatever of the word about which I send you, and which I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. And now, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves unto my hand, and whatever is found. And the priest answered David and said, There is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is set apart bread, provided the young men have kept themselves from women. And David answered the priest and said to him, Truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are set apart, and it is an ordinary mission, and also it was set apart in the vessel today. Then the priest gave him set apart bread, for there was no bread there except the showbread, which had been taken from before Yahuwah, in order to put hot bread in on the day it is taken away. Now one of the servants of Saul was there that day. Was there that day, detained before Yahuwah, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chef of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. And David said to Ahimelech, Is there not here on my hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the matter of the king was urgent. And the priests said, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you struck in the valley of Elah, see, it is wrapped in a garment behind the shoulder garment. If you would take it, take it, for there is none other except this one here. And David said, There is none like it. Give it to me. Sorry, guys. I just noticed Darren Haworth jumped in the chat. It's good to see you. Caleb House shirts. Yep, Caleb House shirts went up on the website today. Appreciate you guys. All right, so we're in chapter 21, verse 10. My phone made a beeping noise. I had to check and make sure that we were still live. David flees to Gath. Here we go. And David arose and fled that day from before Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him to each Did they not sing of him to each other in dances, saying, Saul struck his thousands and David his 10,000s? And David took these words to heart, and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath, and changed his behavior before them, and feigned madness in their hands, and scratched on the doors of the gates, and let his saliva run down on his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Look, you see the man is acting like a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Am I short of madmen, that you have brought this one to act as a madman near me? Should this one come into my house? Chapter 22. And David went from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And his brothers and all his father's house heard it, and went down to him there. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone bitter in being gathered to him. So he became head over them, and there was about 400 men with him. 400 men with him. And David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and said to the king of Moab, Please let my father and mother come here with you, till I know what Elohim does for me. And he left them with the king of Moab, And they dwelt with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. And the prophet Gad said to David, do not remain in the stronghold. Leave and go to the land of Judah. So David left and went into the Hereth woods. And Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered, while Saul was in Geba, sitting under a tamarisk tree in Ramah, with his spear in his hand and all his servants standing about him. And Saul said to his servants, who were standing around him, hear now, you Benjamites. Does the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? For all of you have conspired against me, and there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is not one of you who is grieved for me, or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servants against me to lie in wait, as it is this day. So it looks like Saul has become quite paranoid, believing that everybody's against him. Obviously due to the evil spirit that Yahuwah allowed to come over him. Verse 9, and Doeg the Edomite, who was set over the servants of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse going to Nob, to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and he inquired of Yahuwah for him, gave him food, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. And the king sent someone to call Ahimelech the priest, son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were in Nob, and they all came to the king. And Saul said, hear now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, my master. And Saul said to him, why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, by giving him bread and a sword, and have inquired of Elohim for him to rise against me, to lie in wait, as it is this day? And Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who among all your servants is so trustworthy as David? Who is the king's son-in-law, and has turned aside to your counsel, and is esteemed in your house? Have I today begun to inquire of Elohim for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king lay a case against his servant, or against any of the house of my father, for your servant knew not of all this, little or much. And the king said, you shall certainly die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. The king then said to the guards who stood about him, turn and put the priest of Yahuwah to death, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not reveal it to me. But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to come against the priests of Yahuwah. Smart choice. Verse 18, and the king said to Doeg, you turn and come against the priests. And the king said to Doeg, you turn and come against the priests. So Doeg the Edomite turned and came against the priests, and put to death on that day 85 men who wore a linen shoulder garment. That's 85 priests wearing linen. And he struck Nob, the city of the priests, with the edge of the sword, from men even to women, from children even to nursing infants, and oxen and donkeys and sheep, with the edge of the sword. And one of the sons of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar reported to David that Saul had killed the priests of Yahuwah. And David said to Abiathar, I knew that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would certainly inform Saul. I am accountable for all the lives of your father's house. Remain with me, do not fear, for he who seeks my life seeks your life. But with me you are safe. Chapter 23. And they informed David, saying, see, the Philistines are fighting with Keilah, and they are plundering the threshing floors. So David inquired of Yahuwah, saying, shall I go and strike these Philistines? And Yahuwah said to David, go. and smite the Philistines and save Keilah. And David's men said to him, See, we here in Judah are afraid. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? And David inquired of Yahuwah once again. And Yahuwah answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I am giving the Philistines into your hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines. And he led away their livestock and struck them, a great smiting. Thus David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. And it came to be when Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with a shoulder garment on his hand. And Saul was informed that David had gone to Keilah. Then Saul said, Elohim has estranged him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars. And Saul summoned all the people to battle, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. And David knew that Saul was plotting evil against him, and said to Abiathar the priest, Bring the shoulder garment here. And David said, O Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, your servant has heard for certain that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Are the landowners of Keilah going to surrender to me into his hand? Is Saul coming down, as your servant has heard? O Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, I pray, let your servant know. And Yahuwah said, He is coming down. And David said, Are the landowners of Keilah going to surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul? And Yahuwah said, They are going to surrender you. And David and his men, about 600, arose and left Keilah and went wherever they could go. And Saul was informed that David had escaped from Keilah, and he ceased to go out. And David remained in the wilderness, in strongholds, and he remained in the hill country, in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but Elohim did not give him into his hands. And David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Horesh and strengthened his hand in Elohim, and said to him, Do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, is not going to find you, and you are to reign over Israel, and I am to be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that. And they made a covenant before Yahuwah, and David remained at Horesh, while Jonathan went to his own house. And the Ziphites came up to Saul at Geba, saying, Is David not hiding with us in strongholds, Horesh, in the hill of Hakilah, which is on the south of the wasteland? And now, O king, by all the desire of your being, come down, and our part is to surrender him into the king's hand. And Saul said, Blessed are you of Yahuwah, for you have sympathy with me. Please go, prepare yet further, and find out and see the place where his hideout is. Who has seen him there? For I am told that he is very cunning. So look, I learn all about the hiding places where he hides, and you shall come back to me with certainty. Then I shall go with you, and it shall be, if he is in the land, that I shall search for him throughout all the clans of Judah. And they rose and went to Ziph before Saul, while David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the desert plain on the south of the wasteland. And Saul and his men went to seek him, and they informed David. So he went down to the rock and remained in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard this, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. And Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. And David was hurrying to get away from Saul, and Saul and his men were surrounding David and his men to take them. Then a messenger came to Saul, saying, Hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. So Saul turned back from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore, they called that place Selah Hama, Hamalakoth. Selah Hamalakoth. And David went up from there and remained in strongholds at En-gedi. And it came to be, when Saul had returned from pursuing the Philistines, that it was reported to him, saying, See, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the sheepfolds on the way, and there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were sitting in the sides of the cave. And the men of David said to him, See the day of which Yahuwah said to you, See, I am giving your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it seems good to you. And David arose and gently cut off the corner of Saul's robe. And it came to be afterward that the heart of David struck him because he had cut the robe of Saul. Interesting, right? That these men are like, hey, this is your chance, your opportunity. He's been delivered into your hand. And it grieved David that he even cut Yahuwah's anointed his robe. Verse 6, So he said to his men, Far be it from me, by Yahuwah, that I should do this matter to my master, anointed of Yahuwah, to stretch out my hand against him, for he is the anointed of Yahuwah. And David dispersed his servants with words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul rose up from the cave and went on his way. And afterward David arose and went out of the cave and called out to Saul, saying, My master, the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth and did obeisance. And David said to Saul, Why do you listen to the words of men who say, See, David seeks to do you evil? See, this day your eyes have seen that Yahuwah gave you today into my hand in the cave, and one said to kill you, but my eye pardoned you. And I said, I do not stretch out my hand against my master, for he is the anointed of Yahuwah. And my father, see, yes, see the corner of your robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you while you are hunting my life to take it. Let Yahuwah judge between you and me, and let Yahuwah revenge me on you, but my hand is not against you. As the proverb of the ancients says, wrong comes from the wrongdoer, but my hand is not against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog, a flea? And Yahuwah shall be judge, and rightly rule between you and me, and see and plead my case, and rightly rule me out of your hand. And it came to be, when David had ended speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, Is this your voice, my son David? So Saul lifted up his voice and wept. And he said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown today that you have done good to me, for when Yahuwah surrendered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, shall he let him get away safely? And let Yahuwah reward you with good for what you have done to me today. And now look, I know that you shall certainly reign, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. And now swear to me by Yahuwah that you do not cut off my seed after me, nor destroy my name from my father's house. And David swore to Saul. Then Saul went home, and David and his men went up to the strongholds. Chapter 25. So yeah, he never had any intentions of killing Saul. This was a figment of his imagination that Saul had, or that David had conspired against him. He had been subject to an evil spirit, which is a curious thing. How it says that an evil spirit, that Yahuwah sent an evil spirit and allowed it to be upon him. It's interesting. All right, let's go ahead and keep on reading it. I'm not sure what the time is right now. I think we're going to read one more chapter. If I can figure out how to get it back on there. There we go. All right. All right. Now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered and mourned for him, and buried him at his home in Ramah. And David arose and went down into the wilderness of Paran. Now there was a man in Maon, and his work was in Carmel. And the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he came to be shearing his sheep in Carmel. And the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. Yeah, we're going to go with Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful, but the man was hard and evil in his doings, and he was of Caleb. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, and David sent 10 young men. And David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel, and you shall come to Nabal, and greet him in my name, and say this, long life and peace to you, and peace to your house, and peace to all that you have. And now I have heard that you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us. We did not put them to shame, and not a speck of theirs was missing in all the days they were in Carmel. Ask your young men and let them inform you, so that my young men find favor in your eyes. For we come on a good day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David." And the young men of David came and spoke to Nabal according to all the words of the name of David, and waited. But Nabal answered the servants of David and said, "Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? The servants who are running away from their masters have become many nowadays. And I shall take my bread and my water and my meat that I have slaughtered for my shearers, and give it to men coming from who knows where." Oh, shall I do that? Shall I give it to men who come from who knows where? And the young men of David turned around on their way and went back, and came and reported to him all these words. And David said to his men, "Each one gird on his sword." So they each girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 remained with the baggage. And one of the young men informed Abigail, the wife of Nabal, saying, "See, David has sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master." But he scoffed at them. "But the men were very good to us, and did not put us to shame, nor did we miss any item all the days we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both by night and day, all the days we were with them tending the sheep. And now, know and see what you should do, for evil has been resolved against our master and against all the household. And he is and he is too much of a son of Belial to speak to. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine, and 5 sheep made ready, 5 measures of roasted grain, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. And she said to her servants, Pass over before me. See, I am coming after you. But she did not inform her husband Nabal. And it came to be, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. And David had said, Only in vain have I protected all that this one has in the wilderness, so that not a speck was missing of all that belongs to him, and he has repaid me evil for good. Let Elohim do so and more also to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light. And Abigail saw David, and hastened to come down from the donkey, and fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground, and fell at his feet, and said, On me, my master, let this crookedness be on me. And please let your female servant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your female servant. Please, let not my master regard this man of Belial Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your female servant, did not see the young men of my master whom you sent. And now, my master, as Yahuwah lives, and as your being lives, since Yahuwah has withheld you from coming to bloodshed, and from avenging yourself with your own hand, and now then, let your enemies be as Nabal, even those seeking evil against my master. And now this present which your female servant has brought to my master, let it be given to the young men who follow my master. Please forgive the transgression of your female servant, for Yahuwah is certainly making a steadfast house for my master, because my master fights the battles of Yahuwah, and evil is not found in you in all your days. And if a man rises to pursue you and seeks your life, and the life of my master has been bound in the bundle of the living with Yahuwah your Elohim, then the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling. And it shall be, when Yahuwah has done for my master according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has commanded you to be ruler over Israel, do not let this be staggering and stumbling of heart to my master, for you have shed blood without cause, or that you have shed blood without cause, or that my master has saved himself. And when Yahuwah has done good to my master, then remember your female servant. And David said to Abigail, Blessed be Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. And blessed is your good taste, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed, and from avenging myself with my own hand. Nevertheless, as Yahuwah Elohim of Israel lives, who has kept me back from doing evil to you, if you had not hurried to come to meet me, not a male would have been left to Nabal by break of day, for certain. And David received from her hand what she had brought him, and said to her, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have listened to your voice, and have accepted your face. And Abigail went to Nabal, and see, he was at a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was glad within him, and he was exceedingly drunk. So she told him not a word, little or much, until morning light. And it came to be in the morning, when the wine had gone from Nabal, and his wife had told him these matters, that his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. And it came to be in about 10 days that Yahuwah smote Nabal, and he died. See, Yahuwah avenged on David's behalf. Verse 39, and David heard that Nabal was dead, and he said, Blessed be Yahuwah, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. For Yahuwah has returned the evil of Nabal on his own head. And David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. And when the servants of David had come to Abigail at Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, David sent us to you to ask you to become his wife. And she arose, bowed her face to the earth, and said, Here is your female servant, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my master. And Abigail hurried and rode on a donkey with 5 of her female attendants, as she followed the messengers of David and became his wife. David had also taken Ahinoam of Yisrael, and so both of them were his wives. And Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, son of Laish, who was from Galium. All right, so in this next chapter, chapter 26, Saul, he hasn't learned his lesson yet, and yep, goes for blood again. Kind of crazy, huh? So yep, that's where we're posting up. Shalom, Sasson. So and OCP, shalom. Yep, Abigail is indeed a Proverbs 1. So yes, and I wanted to point something else out, and I kind of glossed over it, but I want to back up just a little bit, and I might be reading into this a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not. There's a little nugget in here. I'm sure there's plenty of them, but there's a nugget in here. I want to find it. Okay, here. Check it out. She grabs all this stuff: 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep made ready, 5 measures of roast grain, and 100 clusters of raisin, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. And she said to her servants, Pass over before me. And then David and his hand was stayed from taking vengeance on all the people because of what she did. There's a little bit of a Passover element to what was going on here. And I don't want to overthink that or read into it more than, necessary, but I just thought that was pretty interesting that because of her offering, that many people were spared. Not a man would have been spared, but because she did that, only Nabal was taken. And just interesting. Yeah, riding on a donkey at that, right? I know there's a lot tied in there. There's more. Every time we read these passages, we'll see more and more and more. Oh, you're welcome, OCPs. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys the new T-shirt. This is the Caleb House shirt. It's got a pretty cool what do you call it? Like a seal. It's got the shofar. Oh, it's not in the frame. Here, let me get it in the frame. It's got the shofar, and it's got the Bible. It's got the swords and the broken chains. And on the back here, Yahuwah's children are not for sale. clean and undefiled religion before the Elohim and Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. You guys can probably scan that screenshot if you want to and go there. And most of you guys are probably already supporting Caleb House, but this is a cool way that we're able to help raise money for Caleb House. Everybody knows Caleb House is doing Yah's work, taking care of the most vulnerable among us. And yep, if you guys want to pick one of those up, they're hot off the press today. And I think we've already sold a handful of these shirts. But yeah, man, you guys check it out. I've been busy pressing all those shelves, all the sizes and designs. Everything's stocked up now. I'm back stocked up after Hebrew Fest. I had a lot of printing to do, and we're back in action. Yeah, Abigail had a well-stocked pantry indeed. Pineapple jam. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like got people coming up, pointing their phone at your shirt. Thank you. All right, guys, that's gonna be the reading for today. If you guys have anything that stood out to you in that reading, it'd be cool to chop it up a little bit if you guys want. I did notice that I mean, I a lot of the times before I read these, I'll listen to the book that we're going to be reading on Audible. And so I've listened to 1 Samuel at least 3 or 4 times in the last couple weeks. But it's also one of my favorite stories, or one of my favorite books to listen to. But I think I pointed it out the last video, the last Bible reading that we did on here. The faithfulness of Jonathan's armor bearer, and how David kind of filled that role and represented that role as Saul's armor bearer. Jonathan was facing, well, he was coming out to a camp of 20 Philistines, and he was like, hey, should we go against them? And he prayed. He's like, okay, if they say, stay there and we'll come to you, then Yahuwah's hand is not with us. But if they say, come up to us and fight, then Yahuwah's hand is with us. And so Jonathan's armor bearer was like unwavering, absolutely, totally in, didn't question him at all. He said, I'm right by your side. And I just thought that was like very courageous. I mean, a lot of these people, David, and I mean, Jonathan might not even get enough credit when we talk about like heroes of the faith, but that was a lot of courage for an armor bearer, and he just stood by his side. But what it reminded me of was when David, because there was a lot of parallels there. It seems like intentionally, like they were like one being. Their souls were like knit together. They were so close. So I think that there was also a lot of similarities in their personality too. Like when David came to the Philistine armies when they were facing off with Israel, and the champion Goliath was defying the Elohim of Israel for 40 days. And David was stirred up and was like not having it, couldn't even hold back. And so he challenged, well, first he was like asking everybody over and over, so what are they going to do for the guy who defeats this Philistine? And like seriously inquiring, like somebody who's about to make a serious purchase. He's asking the questions. He's like showing serious interest. And anyways, I thought it was interesting that Philistine, Goliath, also said, come out to fight me. So he called David out to fight him. And it was just a parallel that David was given the same a confirmation, just like Jonathan, when the Philistines called him out. He said, come up to fight me. And then shortly thereafter, he was given into the hand. The enemy was given into his hand. Also, something I was thinking about while I was reading through this is David still packing around Goliath's sword like this whole time? Because that would make some seriously cool imagery. Just a warrior David with Goliath-sized sword in his hand, just yielding this massive sword. Be pretty cool to see a picture. You're most welcome, GR Cleve. Now I have more info put in my memory about Michal and Abigail. Hearing helps the memory banks. I agree. I like reading out loud, or I like listening to Audible a lot. Well, for one, it helps me to multitask. If I'm doing something like counting inventory, I can't listen to Audible and actually retain anything. But if I'm printing, something, it's kind of like driving. One of those things that's muscle memory now. You don't have to think about it anymore. You're just like kind of get into the zone and you're just cruising. When I'm printing, I'm cruising and I can listen to Audible. One of the things I love about screen printing is I have some dedicated time to feed my brain and soul. The rock took down the giant, just like the small piece of the mountain in Daniel that took out the statue. Shadow of Yeshua. Interesting. Yeah, that's something to think about, huh? The rock that David threw to take down Goliath, just like a small piece of the mountain in Daniel that took out the statue. Wow. Yep. Yeah, I love. I listen to a lot of personal development books. So when I was working in sales, I would listen to a lot of sales books, and one of my favorite authors is Zig Ziglar, and he I think he coined the term automobile university. So that was back when they were listening to cassette tapes for the audio books. There wasn't any app or internet on our phone. It's kind of cool living in this generation, watching everything go from I watched CDs become a big thing. CDs were popular, went from cassette tapes to CDs, which CDs were never any good. You just get a CD that skips after a week. To now everything went to MP3, and now I don't even think they make MP3 players anymore. I think that everything's just on your phone. Your cassettes were disco music? That's funny. I had a cassette with I used to record. Oh man, my mom probably was so upset with me. I used to just you could put pretty much any cassette into like a radio, and then if it had a record button, you could record whatever was on the radio over that tape. I recorded over several tapes. I think there was some old Bad Company and Leonard Skinner tapes that I ruined. Thank you, Darren. Oh, are you talking about this one? This is a one-off that I did. You guys have seen the Messiah and the Moedim shirt, but you probably haven't seen this color. I wanted to do a run of this shirt in this color. Oh, destroyed. Major fail. I need a... Sorry, guys. Hopefully I didn't make you dizzy. Oh, we got MT Knives. Not sponsored. I bought this with my own money, but this is so handy. I like having my pockets empty. And, but anyways, yeah, Messiah and the Moedim. This is like on a acid wash. It really looks like more like a band t-shirt, which is kind of the model or the feel I was going for when we designed this shirt. But yeah, but the t-shirt, this specific style of t-shirt wasn't in stock in all the different sizes. So yeah, 80s stonewash look. I know I love this look too. And I really like the thickness of the material. I love our t-shirts and how soft they are, but I think I'm going to start switching it up. I think it's time for a little change. We'll just keep all the designs and put them on different colors. I'd rather sacrifice a little bit of softness up front, because after you wash them a few times, they all turn pretty soft anyways, especially if they're ring spun cotton. But I need a more durable t-shirt. I conceal carry, and where I carry ends up rubbing holes in my t-shirt, and the shirts are a little too thin for durability. Yeah, the soft, it's hard to get over the softness though. It's tough. It's tough because the softness is like when you put on a brand new Sanctified t-shirt, it's like super soft, but they're also kind of thin, honestly. Need that ride the lightning look. Yep. All right, guys. Well, I love you guys, and I appreciate you hanging on here with me. I always look forward to chatting with you guys a little bit after these readings. I gotta be more consistent doing these videos. You know, life has a lot of stuff going on, and I'm pretty much caught up on t-shirts though, so that's good. But you guys have an amazing evening. Pray that y'all are blessed with good health and shalom, and we'll catch you in the next video. Take care, guys.